Hey, it's Tuesday morning, and if it's Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, you know what time it is. That's right, it's time for another edition of the Kitchings Table. Good morning, I'm Earl Kitchings, your host. Always glad to be with you here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. You can catch us also on these social platforms, Roku TV, GPAC, definitely on Facebook Live, and definitely, most definitely on YouTube. So go out there, find us. If you're not listening to us now, go out there and find us and listen to what news or information, stories, whatever was brought to you today on August 23rd, 2022, because for most of the country, today is election day. And a lot of elections, both at the local level, state level, and at the national level, are happening. And there's going to be some turnover in some of the seats that are now filled by certain parties, certain individuals. Some seats have already been filled and replaced. Others will have that opportunity today. I know here in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, where I am, they are, putting it to task for state senate, state house, city council. I'm not sure about the governor. I don't think the governor is up. Congressional Senate. So it's all out there and up for whoever has the political clout to turn the race into their advantage. But when we talk about political clout, the political clout is not just who you are and what you've done. Clout normally comes in the form of what? Money. And in learning about a recent donation of money. Now, the interesting thing about what we're going to talk about today on the show is it's not just money, it's dark money. So our title for today's show is Dark Money, No Sugar. Dark Money, No Sugar. And why we bring this to you today is because not just the amount that was brought, but the way it was done in such a way that no penalty of taxes will be paid on this money. No taxes have to be paid. Believe it or not. 1.6 billion. $1.6 billion. And that's a lot of zeros. And when you look at what it takes to get to $1 billion, you got to get to 999,000 million in order to get to that 1 billion. So when you look at how much money this is that came from one donor, he gave it all to one group, 1.6 billion. And when we think about the needs that we have in this country, that we have in America, when we think about the needs of people who are hurting, who are hungry, who are homeless, who are in need of medical attention, the veterans who need a medical attention. When you think about what you could do with $1 billion, couldn't the 1 billion been donated amongst different groups to help, and you take the 0.6 million and donate it to one group for political reasons? No, that's not the way it works. Political clout. So let's get into this. A donation of 1.6 billion was recently given by a gentleman by the name of Barry Seed, an electronics manufacturing mogul in Illinois. And what Mr. Seed did was to take that money and give it to a gentleman and his nonprofit to help them change the political landscape of what goes on in America. This is what we talk about, and this is what we mean when we say political clout. You gave a donation of $1.6 billion to an organization so you can affect change from a political standpoint. And while this may excite or raise your radar for thinking that, wow, this is a great amount of money that is going to a Republican fund, it's not so much that just the Republicans have money to put into these PACs and nonprofits and things of that nature. Democrats, they do it too. And we're going to share that with you later on today. But as it states here in the article that we discovered, that the cash infusion was arranged through an unusual series of transactions that appear to have been void of tax liabilities. Mr. Seed is a longtime conservative donor, made his fortune as the chairman and chief executive of an electrical device manufacturing company. So when you think about when they had this problem with the chips that go in computers, and there was a shortage of chips, and car manufacturers and other manufacturers who needed these chips, there was they were just not there. The companies weren't able to get them. Imagine him making these chips and charging a nice penny for them. The name of his company was called Trip Light. TRIPPLITE, Trip Light. And Mr. C donated 100% of the shares of Trip Light to a Mr. Leonard A. Leo, whose Republican donors and politicians, what they're interested in doing is financing judicial appointments, abortion rights, voting rules, and climate change. They want to force the issue for the people who can affect abortion. They are anti-abortion. Voting rules, which means gerrymandering changes and things of that nature. Climate change. As bad as we see the climate getting in the country and around the world, the flooding and everything else that's going on, how can you deny that the climate, the earth is not heating up a lot more? And then judicial appointments. The people who affect our court system, our justice system, our Supreme Court, our state Supreme Courts, our local courts, they want to affect these things. So the money was given to the nonprofit called Marble Freedom Trust. And a few shows back, I brought to you the name of a bank that was a politically synergized bank called the Chain Bridge Bank, located in Alexandria, Virginia. And this bank is where a lot of the political people put their campaign funds. Now, most of us may go to a bank that is a standalone bank. You drive up to a bank, it's its own bank, drive through, things of that nature. Well, the Chain Bridge Bank is not a standalone bank. It is located in a building, in a plaza, in I think a 6-story building. So you wouldn't recognize it unless you walked into it. We're going to an office in this building. And it probably has good space in there, but it doesn't look like your normal bank. And many politicians put their money in this bank. And what happens with it is sheltered, covered, whatever you want to call it, until they need it. And these PACs put their money in these banks, in this particular bank, and it has some coverage. So the perspective they gave in the article said that the 1.6 billion that the Marble Trust reaped from the sale is slightly more than the total of 1.5 billion spent in 2020 by 15 of the most politically active nonprofit organizations that generally align with Democrats. There you have it. So 1.5 billion by 15 political nonprofits for Democrats in 2020. The Republicans get that plus $1 extra million from one guy in one stroke of the pen. And we don't, you really probably don't think about it, but the next time you get mailings in your mailbox, the big postcards asking you to vote for a specific individual for a specific seat in a specific state or city, the money filters down to those campaigns. TV ads. When you see those TV ads running, that is a lot of money being spent. So if you see it in your city, imagine it running in 200 cities in all the states. Those ads cost money, especially when they're done during prime time. And prime time is when? Most particularly from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Prime time TV. News starts at 6, goes on to your normal TV programming starting at 8, 9, 10. That is truly prime time. 8, 9, 10 p.m., that's truly prime time. Till 11, then it tapers back off. So the Democrats have been getting this dark money, just maybe not in one big chunk like this. However, they get this money and they use it for political gains and advantages. Now, what they're saying is the Marble Freedom Trust would help conservatives level the playing field when it comes to spending in these political campaigns. Now, when we talk about how this happens, the thing about this dark money is this. It can be spent on politics with unlimited spending, and the funds are not subject to corporate disclosure rules of public companies. Marble Freedom Trust says that the 1.6 came from the sale of gifted company and subsidiaries, but indicated that it withheld identifying information to protect donor confidentiality, which means they got it. They're not going to tell you who gave it. Well, this came out, and Mr. Barry Seed gave this tremendous gift. Now, what is dark money, you may ask? What does that do? How does that work? Well, dark money refers to spending meant to influence political outcomes where the source of the money is not disclosed. Influencing political outcomes where the source of the money is not disclosed. And there are a few nonprofits that umbrella nonprofits from the IRS and from tax purposes. And we're familiar with the 501c3 as a nonprofit. But there's a 501c4, a 501c5, a 501c6. Political active nonprofits, such as a 501c4, are generally under no legal obligation to disclose their donors, even if they spend to influence elections. Now, that particular caveat in the business world, in the tax world, will be called a loophole. Somebody can give 1.6 billion. Now, this just happened to come out. Now, you know, if someone gave 500 million or 800 million and it never came out under this 501c4, they're not under any obligations to tell America. Yet the money just keeps rolling downhill. When they choose not to reveal their sources of funding, they are considered dark money groups. So again, dark money equivalates to the term opaque. Opaque means you can't really see through it. So if you've got a window and you cover it up with something like a dark pasty substance so that no light comes in, if you got a hole and you cover it up, if there is any way for light to come into something and you block it out so that nothing can get through it, light can't get through it, that's opaque. Dark money, dark. So when they choose not to reveal their sources of funding, and they're called dark money groups, I did look into the number of dark money groups there are out there. We're going to bring that to you in our pantry section today because it is just unbelievable the number of groups that are considered, quote unquote. You can call them dark money. You can call them nonprofits for political gains. But opaque nonprofits, quote unquote, shell companies, may give unlimited amounts of monies to super PACs. And while super PACs are legally required to disclose their donors, some of these groups are effectively dark money outlets wherein the bulk of the funding cannot be traced back to the original donor. A shell company. Again, shell. Think about a shell. If you put a shell down on a table, no light can come through. This is what they want to happen. They don't want you to know about it. They want it to remain anonymous. They want it to remain shielded from you. See, people talk about, and it's interesting how over the last maybe 5 to 8 years, the word transparency. We want to be transparent. Okay. That can be good in some instances. In other instances, my personal belief is it's just a distraction. It's just a distraction, a way to make you think we're going to talk about being transparent when in reality, it's not going to happen. We're going to keep it opaque. Dark money groups recently have spent about $1 billion, mainly on television and online ads and mailers. That's where the money goes, to those entities. So when we talk about this dark money, there are a couple of election spending that we've discovered, and then we're going to go into the political nonprofits. So there's hard money and there's soft money. Hard money is when donors must disclose, contribution limits apply, and organizations are allowed to coordinate their efforts to help elect the candidate. This is not a dark money group. These groups include committees, political parties, and traditional political action committees, which is a PAC. So when you hear the word PAC, when you hear them talking about this PAC did this and this super PAC did that, a political action committee, a committee that has its design set on affecting a change in some particular way for some particular issue by some particular group. PACs exist on both sides of the fence, Republican and Democrat. So don't think it's just one side. It's on both sides. Soft money. So hard money is traditional political spending. Soft money is the outside political spending, sometimes referred to as independent or non-coordinated spending, and it refers to political spending made by organizations and individuals other than the candidate campaigns themselves. All outside groups aren't political parties, except for some of the traditional PACs. Then there are those donation groups may engage in direct political activities, including buying advertising that advocates for or against the candidate, going door to door, or running phone banks. So we've been bombarded with all of this over the last couple of months. You get the ads in the mail, you get the notes on your door, the hangers on your door, you get the calls. All this money is being spent just to affect political change in the political landscape. However, under soft money, organizations are not allowed to coordinate their spending with political candidates or parties. So they can spend the money, they just can't coordinate their efforts. Super PACs are required to disclose their donors, others are not. Some are, some are not. These non-disclosing organizations are referred to as dark money groups. Once again, dark money groups. When they don't want to tell you, that's dark money. Under the table money, if you want to call it, the bag of money that somebody just drops on you, gives you. No name, not where it's from, it's just there. And the Federal Election Commission, is in charge of looking into these types of situations. So when we talk about nonprofits, and it was just surprising to know that you got nonprofits and then you have these PACs. So I'm going to go through the nonprofit designations. And first of all, nonprofit tax-exempt groups organized under 501c of the Internal Revenue Code may engage in varying amounts of political activity. Because they are not technically political organizations, they are generally not required to disclose their donors to the public. This includes super PACs. So there are a number of types of 501c organizations with different structure, uses, and capabilities. None of these organizations are required to publicly disclose the identity of their donors or sources of money through some disclosed funding sources voluntarily. You can do it voluntarily if you choose to, but if not, you won't get penalized or fined. So again, here's a loophole for those people who have. For those people who have. For those people who have not, if you do a loophole or try to utilize something to benefit yourself, IRS has you on the watch list and they're looking for you. Not these people, though, because they're illegal. So we're going to start with the first group, the 501c3, and these organizations operate for religious, charitable, scientific, or educational purposes. These groups are not supposed to engage in any political activities, though some voter registration activities are permitted. Donations to these organizations are tax deductible. So groups like the NAACP, Center for American Progress, the Heritage Foundation, Center for Responsive Politics, where you may not recognize the latter of that group, you do recognize the NAACP. And when they say you can engage in religious, charitable, scientific, or educational purposes. So religious, 99% of most churches are considered 501c3s. So that's the 501c3 group. 501c4 groups, often referred to as social welfare organizations. Now, isn't that a unique way to describe a nonprofit? A social welfare organization. And the parody to that is these nonprofits are the most common kind of dark money group. Dark money with all this millions and billions of dollars, but they're considered social welfare. But yet people who are on social welfare may not see much of that money. They may engage in political activities as long as these activities do not become their primary purpose. The IRS has never defined what primary means or how a percentage should be calculated. So the current de facto rule is 49.9% of overall expenditures, a limit that some groups have found easy to circumvent. Donations to these groups are not tax deductible. Social welfare organizations, political activities, and primary or how a percentage should be calculated. Who are these groups? Social welfare organizations. Social welfare. Not welfare, social welfare. There's a difference, of course. The NRA, the National Rifle Association, Planned Parenthood, Majority Forward, One Nation. The first two you've heard of. Majority Forward, One Nation, maybe not so much. And that's because they're social welfare organization. So these nonprofits are the most common kind of dark money groups. Then we have the 501c5, 345. These are labor and agricultural groups and may engage in political activities as long as they adhere to the same general limits as the 501c4 organizations. They are generally funded by dues from union employees. So you pay your taxes, you pay your union dues. This money is spread out, dispersed in all kinds of ways. Isn't the IRS a great organization to have where they can govern how this money comes in and goes out? Donation to these groups are not tax deductible. So, okay, it doesn't matter if it's not tax deductible. So, okay, you gave to this group. Okay, so you got taxed for it. Okay. Groups you may know as 501c5, Service Employees International, American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, which is the AFL-CIO, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the AFSCME. These are your labor and agricultural groups that may engage in political activities under the 501c3 designation. That's not their primary business, but there's that loophole that if they want to donate money to affect the change that will help their particular need, they can. And the politicians know this. That's why when you hear them speaking to certain groups or going to certain plants or factories and things of that nature, they're not there so much for the building of products as to engage the people of the unions who manufacture the products, the labor unions, the agricultural unions. It's all a plan. So 501c3 operate for religious, charitable, scientific, or educational purposes. 501c4, social welfare organizations, most common kind of dark money groups. 501c5, your labor and agricultural groups. And then there's the 501c6. These are business leagues, chamber of commerce, real estate boards, and trade associations, which may engage in political activity as long as they adhere to the same general limits of the 501c4. Again, donation to these groups are not tax deductible. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the American Bankers Association, the National Association of Realtors, these are all considered 501c6 organizations. Business organizations, Chamber of Commerce, real estate boards. Again, these organizations have a destiny for what they are trying to do when you say they can donate money to political activities to affect the change. There's another loophole that the IRS allows. So your 501c3s, you can't engage in political activities. But these other groups, the 501c4, 5, and 6, sure, you can give your money. You can, don't be in it too heavily, but yeah, you can give something. So when Mr. Barry C. decided that he wanted to donate his $1.6 billion to the Marble Freedom Trust, okay, no penalties. You won't be taxed. Everything is good. The loophole is there. We found a loophole and we used it. Not a problem. Hey, today is Tuesday, August the 23rd, 2022. This is the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings. Check us out every Tuesday morning on YouTube, Facebook Live, GPAC, Roku, on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. We want to be an information source for you to gain knowledge and understand some things better. And if we don't explain it better, hey, send us a line and let us know what you didn't understand and look into something and see what we can find. So to finish out what we're talking about today on our topic, dark money, no sugar. Super PACs, hybrid PACs, LLCs, and shell companies, technically known as independent expenditure committees, super PACs may raise and spend an unlimited amount of money and accept contributions from companies, nonprofits, unions, and individuals. They cannot give money directly to candidates. They are exempt from the limits on fundraising and spending that regular PACs must abide by. So that means when this man decided to give his money to this Marble Freedom Trust, then the Marble Freedom Trust can do what they choose to do with the money, and it's not taxable. So the Federal Election Commission must identify where the money is or who's making the money or making the donations. And it's done on a monthly or semi-annual basis in non-federal election years. And super PACs are quite transparent, except when the donor is a shell corporation or a nonprofit that doesn't disclose its donors. So the super PACs, yeah, we'll tell you who gives money until they come under the disguise of a 501c4, 5, or 6. Pop-up super PACs form shortly before an election may game disclosure deadlines, enabling them to spend unlimited sums influencing races without disclosing their funding source until after voters go to the polls. That's a pop-up. And then they also have what they call a single candidate super PAC, which are run by individuals who are personally close to a candidate or formally associated with a campaign. So the loopholes, almost like a loop canyon, as large as these things sound like they are. Then we have the hybrid PACs, and it has the ability to operate both as a traditional political action committee, contributing funds to a candidate's committee, and as a super PAC that makes independent expenditures. To do so, these committees must have a separate bank account for each purpose. No problem. We open up the bank accounts. Not a problem. The committee may collect unlimited contributions from almost any source for its independent expenditure account, but may not use those funds for its traditional PAC contributions. Now, some of this sounds to be very, very legal jargon that requires lawyers, and that's why you have corporate lawyers who this is what they do. So you have these PACs. You've got the super PAC, you got the regular PAC, you got the pop-up super PAC, you got the single candidate super PAC, all to generate money for a candidate who could win an election and once they get in office, affect change with their vote or propose legislation to affect change that will help that particular group who have their particular interests so that it will affect change. Most of it from a monetary economic standpoint. The bottom line, folks, is this. It's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the money, and the money rules. Now, you've heard the slogan, crime doesn't pay. Well, if you've got these kind of loopholes, you don't have to worry about committing a crime. You don't. It's right there for you to take advantage of. It's been created for you. So don't worry about it. Once you go beyond the limits or the scopes that protect you by the IRS, then that's when you get in trouble. So no, crime doesn't pay unless you're a super PAC or a PAC or pop-up or a single candidate, or you a 501c4, 5, or 6. It does pay. LLCs and shell companies, limited liability companies, they perform a necessary business function, and their unique structure may be easily abused or used in order to hide less than above board activities. In politics, LLCs are sometimes established to help disguise the identity of a donor or source of money spent on behalf of a political candidate. Again, a shell company is a opaque company, and you can have a shell company on top of a shell company on top of a shell company on top of a shell company. You know the shell game, right? Where you got the 3 shells with the P under it, and you just move the shells around, and they ask you, guess where the P is. And when you guess that one shell is not there, that's why they call it shell companies, because the money moves from place to place and it's hidden. So super PACs, hybrid PACs, LLCs, shell companies, 501c4, 5s, and 6. These are all ways to protect that money from being bothered by the government. So in our pantry section today, we're going to talk about the monies given to the political groups. And although this is dated, in 2000, the total grants to political groups since 2008 has been $1 trillion, over $1 trillion. And in this article that we found on the Open Secrets website, the authors, Anna Masoglia and Carl Hillstrom, talk about, the money. And it talks about full disclosure, what most of the voting public wants, whether it be on the right, center, or left. However, the question is whether average Americans feel strongly enough about the dangers of dark money to organize and mobilize at the grassroots to force change at the state level and in Congress and at federal regulatory agencies to change this so that all this mega money does not flow through. Now, former Justice Kennedy created a challenge to create a system of effective disclosure, and he was calling it the Disclose Act. Democracy is strengthened by casting light on elections. Now, whether that's really working, who knows? When you hear about a $1.6 billion contribution by one individual, it sounds like it may not be working. So you got the Marble Freedom Trust. But then on the Democratic side, you got something called the 1630 Fund. And that's to aid the Democrats' efforts to unseat Republicans. And they financed attack ads against former President Trump and vulnerable Republicans. Multi-million-dollar grants single-handedly powered some other organizations, incubated other groups such as a fiscal sponsor that fought against Supreme Court nominees, backed liberal ballot measures and policy proposals. So you've got, you got them on both sides fighting this battle to be a dark money group with dark money funds coming in. Said in 2020 that the 1630 fund raised about $390 million. Well, that's not even halfway to $1 billion. But what does it matter? Because it's interesting that the money comes in and it goes out and spent on TV, radio, online, printing of paper flyers or cards or whatever. So it comes in, and basically the media, whether it be electronic, print, social, they're the ones that benefit because they're getting the monies, because they have the way to expose their plights to the public. So they believe in making all this money just circulate. And when we talk about the groups, I ran across a distinct group, and over a period of time, 3, 4, 5 years, they've raised X amount of dollars, and it's just amazing how much money is being spent on politics to affect change. So here's some of the political dark money groups and the type of money they raised over a 3 to 4 year period. Freedom Partners Chamber of Commerce, not a city, but that's their title. $323 million raised in a 3-year period. Center to Protect Patient Rights, $169 million. Crossroads GPS, $64 million. Sea Change Foundation, $62 million. Climate Works. And I'm just reading the names so you can, hear the names of these groups on the 501c4, 5, and 6, so you can kind of, place them in the place where they need to be. The Sea Change Foundation, $62 million. Climate Works, $51. TC4 Trust, $47. The Atlantic Advocacy Fund, $42. Americans for Job Security, $24. The Advocacy Fund, which is different than the Atlantic Advocacy Fund, $24. Wellspring Committee, $24. Open Society Institute, $19. American Action Network, $18. League of Conservation Voters, $17. Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, $15 million. The Green Tech Action Fund, $15. Foundation to Promote Open Society, 14. Donors Trust, 14. The National Christian Charitable Foundation, 12 million. Cellular Telecom and Internet Association, $12 million. These are some of the names of the top dark money groups that are out there contributing monies to these political campaigns. And again, we talk about the amount of money. And just in what I read to you, based on those organizations, so, 12 and 12, 24 plus 14, 30, 38 plus another 1252 plus 1567 plus another 1582, another $17.99 million. So you can almost look at, and that's just that group. It goes upward to almost $1 billion in monies. Now, let's compare that to the amount of money that the United States government spends and compare that to the revenue of the spending by some of the more populous states as to what their annual fiscal budgets are. And then you have to ask, these folks who donate all this money, if one guy can donate 1.6 billion, when you have guys who can buy sports teams for billions of dollars because they sold it for billions, when they have businesses that make billions of dollars. So think about it like this. If you have billionaires who are worth $50 billion, what is 1 billion? What is 500 million to them if it's going to affect something that can make them another $500 million? And of course, if you ask the question, well, how much money do you need in order to have a good life? As much as we can make. That's probably what they'll tell you. And you would love to see that what they're making is being spent, to the good of humanity, but it's not. It's for selfish reasons, selfish motives, and everybody who is in this political pool, I won't put the S word in front of it, political pool. Everybody's about making some money for themselves, upping the ante for themselves. So the federal government spent $6.8 trillion in 2021. 6.8 trillion. So the 0.8 is in billions. So $6.68 trillion the country, America, spent, which averages out to $20,634 per person that was contributed to the government spending. So when we look at the states and how much money they have in their annual fiscal budgets, $6.8 trillion. $1 trillion is a lot of money, quite a bit. But it takes 999 dollars to get to 1 trillion. So if you're worth 50 billion, that's a great number, but $999 billion. So we took a look at the state budgets. California spent, or their budget in 2018, We don't have the more current ones, so we'll give you what we have. 263 billion, followed by New York at 152 billion, followed by Texas at 124 billion. These are the state budgets. Followed by Pennsylvania and Florida at 80 billion, followed by Ohio at 65 billion, along with Illinois, 65 billion, followed by Massachusetts, Michigan, and New Jersey, $54+ billion in the annual budgets. $54+ billion. So if you add up just those states alone, you still don't get to $1 trillion. Just those states. So the amount of money that is spent, that is raised, that is, we talk about the government spending and, well, the government was in a deficit of, trillions of dollars, yet we spent trillions, but we made trillions. Trillions was brought in. So don't let the big numbers, as they say, psych you out and make you think that there's no money out there, because there's a lot of money out there. And just to give you a heads up, the amount of money the United States has given to Ukraine in their plight against Russia, in the billions. Yet people are starving here in the United States, homeless here in the United States. So the priorities are a little skewed. Everybody who has got some or have more are looking at doing things to help themselves. Hey, my time is up. I hope you've enjoyed what we brought to you today on our topic, Dark Money, No Sugar, on WBISLP 106.9 FM. If it's a Tuesday, please join us every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. for the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, W. Earl Kitchings. Until the next time, we tell you, stay safe, be mindful that COVID is still alive, monkeypox is trying to wedge its way in, and of course, keep your eye, as they always say, follow the money. And the more money that you follow, the larger the pool gets. Until next week, I'm going to say so long. Have a great week. See you then.